What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Kicks and Picks podcast. Week of December 20th. Nick, Scotty, Coach Steve, back with you. Last show before Christmas. And we're plugging along here. Down 2 units last week, 4-6, 76, 81, and 3 on the season, down just about 6 units. We're on a bit of a cold streak, boys. Rough month of December. Don't know how much I love the board this week, but fortunately, we're going to keep you guys entertained regardless. We have two big matchups to talk about. Scotty's Liverpool taking on Arsenal, top of the table clash, followed by Coach Steve's Roma taking on Napoli, which is the bottom of the toilet bowl clash. So a lot of good stuff happening. We got some winners for you. I feel okay about them, but a lot of good stuff to talk through regardless. So I will hit you guys with a gut check. How are we feeling? Saturday, big day for the podcast.
Yeah. Go ahead, Coach. You can start.
I can see how well you both feel about it. This is, here we are.
Well, I mean, I don't know how much there's to like about Roma right now. We'll get into it when we get to the match, but the bets haven't been coming off the way we'd like them to. Another subpar week by us. Those units we accumulated early in the season have quickly begun to evaporate. So I'd love to say this would be our bounce back week, but like you said, like I looked at the board this week, there's no Bundesliga, no Ligue 1, no La Liga to turn to for like secondary options. Normally, we're focusing steady on the Premier League, and it's limited. It is limited. I think we found 10 that we like, maybe not always love, but heck, maybe this will be the week we turn around because we don't love them. Sometimes the ones we love are the ones that bite us the most. So
that is true.
Yeah,
I think I'm in a similar boat as Coach. Obviously Liverpool dropping points at home to a Manchester United team that's been struggling for the last few weeks, although they've had some decent results against like the bottom clubs, but against the top half of the table, they haven't really looked like much. And frankly, I think it's kind of been coming. Obviously, I took Liverpool plus, I think, a goal and a quarter last weekend, and that United came out to my benefit. I wanted to take them double chance, but I knew I'd be maligned on this podcast for trying to reverse jinx Pool. But it's been a long time coming. Their performances leading up to that game hadn't been good. People forget that they were actually down a goal for the first 60 minutes against Crystal Palace, and it took Crystal Palace going down to 10 men before they could get get on the score sheet with a Salah goal, and then pulled out a 90th minute winner from Harvey Elliott. So not great there. And then the match before that was against Sheffield United, where they were basically holding on to a 1-goal lead the whole game until Szoboszlai kind of put it away in the 94th minute. So certainly the performances had been concerning, and the United result is not, frankly, all that surprising to me, just based off of that and knowing the history of the tie between the two.
Yeah, well, let's just get right into it. You just talked a little bit about Pool and their form. They are at home. Arsenal coming to town. First place, 39 points. Pool in second on 38 points. Just to look at kind of that recent form, Arsenal is winners of 4 of their last 5. Pool, you mentioned it, right? Just absolutely steamrolling. A little bit of a letdown was maybe due, as we like to say here on the pod. One thing I do want to say, these teams absolutely neck and neck in terms of goal differential. 35 goals scored, 15 against for Arsenal, 36 for Pool, 15 against. So identical defensive records, 1 goal separates them there. I'm going to run through some odds for you guys quickly on this one. Pool is the slight favorite at home, plus 145. Arsenal plus 185. Draw can be had at plus 260. If you're looking at the two-way money line, draw no bet, Liverpool minus 135, Arsenal plus 105. And over, which I was very interested to see, was set at 2.5 goals, not 3.5. Minus 145 to the over, plus 115 to the under. And the goal scorers, which we can get into in a second, all plus 160 or better. That is starting with, of course, Salah at plus 160. Everybody else plus 200. So I'll hit you with a buy or sell. Coach, I will go to you first. That this is the year, buy or sell, one of these two teams wins the Premier League.
With the way City's been playing right now, I'm buying. that could change after a few more match weeks, depending on what's going on elsewhere. But with the form that City's in right now, I think if one of these teams can win this match outright, I think it gives them a big leg up in the league. A draw would be the best thing for a team like City, I think. But right now, I'm buying. I am. I think these two have been the most consistent side so far. Defensive records have been the best in the league at 15 goals conceded apiece. They're doing a lot of things well. I still personally am tipping Arsenal, I think, just because I feel like over the last year and a half now, they've been the most consistent side in the league outside of City. But I think Liverpool has a bit of a leg up playing this one at Anfield. And I think if Liverpool can get the victory, I think they might be in the driver's seat.
Yeah, I think right now City are still the odds-on favorite with books. They're like minus 120 or so. And then I think Pool and Arsenal are both sitting around plus 225, plus 250, depending on where you get your lines. But I think I agree with what you said, Coach. The way that City have been playing has been concerning. And to me, it's not just so much that they've been dropping points, but it's the manner in which they've been doing it. Because if it's been a result of like lack of goals here and there, I think with Kevin De Bruyne coming back, that would kind of ease some of those concerns. But it's been, they've been conceding, 1 or 2 goal leads at home. That's how they've been dropping points. So they're able to get the goals and build up a 2-goal lead to teams like Crystal Palace, but then their defense just goes around and concedes in the last 20, 30 minutes on a pretty consistent basis. And I don't know that De Bruyne is going to really resolve that for them. They just brought in Vardiol, and he was supposed to be this new anchor to pair with Ruben Dias in the center of defense, but for whatever reason, Pep has him playing left back, which is not probably the best use of his skills, and he just really hasn't settled in yet. Ruben Dias, I think, has been okay this season, but he hasn't been, the best center half in the league. Like sometimes City fans like to proclaim that he is. So it's certainly concerning. I don't know what business they're looking at doing in January. I would assume they'll probably be active in the market because they always are. But it doesn't seem like something that has an easy solve right now. So I would think it would be between Liverpool or Arsenal. And I think it's going to be whichever of these clubs can just stay healthiest in the second half of the season, because we haven't really seen either side deal with a tremendous injury crisis, kind of like Chelsea or Newcastle or Tottenham. Yes, Liverpool have had injuries with, Thiago and Robertson and Jota and some of the likes of
every year with
those
those
guys.
players.
Right, but they've never been at a point where they're trying to field like their fourth or fifth best player at a position, which again is somewhat by design. They have pretty good depth, but same with Arsenal. They've dealt with injuries more so to their front line, but they've never been super long term and they've covered well. But if Arsenal start losing defenders, or if they lose Declan Rice, then it becomes a bigger concern.
Yeah. So one thing I want to call out about Arsenal before I go to you for your betting thoughts, Coach, just taking a look at some of the fixtures from November on. They lost to West Ham in the EFL Cup. I'm just talking about big opposition that they've played. They lost to Newcastle 1-0 in the league. They lost to Villa very recently, right? Was that 2 weeks ago? 1-0 in the league. They were held by PSV in the Champions League. That's not a knock because they were already through, and PSV actually is nasty. They're undefeated in the Dutch league, so that's not bad. Their only really notable win is that 2-0 win against Brighton, and I mean we've kind of seen Brighton come back down to earth a little bit. Although I would say Arsenal looked pretty good. I mean, this team worried me coming into the year just from a goal scoring standpoint. I didn't know how consistently they would find goals. Obviously, they have the attacking pieces. It's kind of similar to Pool, right? They have guys that can shift in and out of positions. I think the depth is pretty good, but at what point do you expect this team to slow down? Or, I mean, we've seen games where they've lost 1-0, right? Where they couldn't find that goal. We've also seen them give up 3 goals to a team like Luton Town. I feel like through 2 years, I still really don't know who Arsenal is, because they'll throw out that occasional stinker against a bad team. They'll beat a team they're not supposed to beat. then they'll lose to a direct competitor. Then they'll, I don't know. They're just kind of all over the place. I mean, credit to them. They're in first place. I'm not trying to take it away from them, but I don't know. I feel like you know what you're going to get from every other team around them. And Arsenal is still kind of a wild card to me.
Yeah, I mean, when you talk about like some of those results, they are in a sense, but at the same time, they've got the most wins in the league, so they're getting the job done when they need to. 35 goals scored in 17, still averaging over 2 goals per match, so they're not struggling that bad for scoring. I mean, the only sides really, City's got 40 goals scored, and then there's a couple other sides with like Liverpool's got 36, and Newcastle's got 36, and Villa 37. So they're right in the mix with the top sides in terms of scoring. They're not that far off the pace of some of those clubs. A big game here or there can swing that plus minus pretty quickly in terms of how many goals forward are
Yeah.
behind some of those
I mean, I
sides.
guess that's what I'm trying to say. That's kind of that's the anomaly, right? Like they've scored 4 goals against Luton Town. They scored, I just saw it, 3 goals against a Burnley. They scored 5 goals against Sheffield. Take some of those results away, it starts to look a lot less impressive, right? I mean, the 1-0 loss to Villa
Villa.
here, the 1-0 loss to Newcastle. There's games where they're scoring 1 goal or 2 goals or less than 2 goals, I guess I should say. And I feel like Pool is just a lot more evenly distributed, if that makes sense. You kind of always know what you're going to get out of them. I don't know if I'm
Yeah, and I
making this
think
up because I want to feel this way, but that's just kind of the sense I get.
And I think this weekend is a big test in that sense because the loss to Villa was at Villa, and Villa's the best home team in the league at 8 wins, perfect record in 8 tries. They've only conceded 5 times in those 8 matches, right? Liverpool's similar, 7 wins, 1 loss, and they've only conceded 5 times in those 8 matches. So can Arsenal go on the road and get a big win, or at least I think even a draw in some senses would be a better result for Arsenal than Liverpool here, considering that it is a Liverpool home match. But I think this is one of those matches where they have to kind of prove it that they can find a second goal if they need it in a match like this because you're playing a team that has not conceded much at home at all.
All right, Coach. So gun to your head, is there a bet you like in this game?
It's tough to make a call in a match like this in terms of money line. I think there's value both ways if you like either side one more than the other. Even draw no bet, I think there's great value in Arsenal at plus 105. The over, the over is tough in this one because of what you mentioned with some of these Arsenal matches. Some of these Arsenal matches stay pretty low scoring, which kind of scares me off that a little bit. Liverpool's been more of the over team lately, 5 out of their last 7. Arsenal, not so much so. So I'm thinking guns in my head. If I'm going to pick one, I'm going to really sit down and think about who I like to win this match. I'll probably take a draw no bet because I think there's value on both sides of it.
All right, Scotty, I know you have a play. We won't spoil that yet, but any last thoughts on Liverpool, on the game, on anything before we move on?
Yeah, I would say I think I would expect to see a match very similar to the United match. I think there's a pretty clear playbook on how to come to Anfield and leave with a point. But that playbook usually means you're not leaving with 3, and that's just to come in, sit 8 guys in the box, frustrate Liverpool defensively, make them take shots from outside, which the midfield has done pretty well in kind of covering up some of the lack of offense that the forwards for Liverpool have created. But I think that's going to be how Arsenal set up. I think that's why I do like the under in this 2.5 plus money is pretty sound. So I think that's certainly in play. And then I have a pick, like you said, Nick, later that I think is maybe a better play.
Yeah, listen, I love to prepare a little bit and not spoil it like I usually do. I would say I probably spoil 8 out of 10 Scotty's picks as we're going through buy or sell. But, it's kind of the same thing we said a couple weeks ago. I think it was the Napoli match. Like whenever do you guys remember seeing an under, not even under 3.5, under 2.5 for Liverpool or for Arsenal at plus money? Like
it's the 2 best defenses in the league,
yeah,
neither
no,
team's allowing more than a goal a game. So it kind of makes sense.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy to look at. All right, let's shift gears to Coach's Squad later on in the afternoon, 2:45 Eastern on Saturday. Roma is at home taking on Napoli. Roma is in 8th, 25 points. Napoli just above them, 5th, 27 points. Odds in this one, Roma plus 185. Napoli plus 140, slight favorites. The draw is plus 205. One of the worst draw lines I think we've seen in recent memory. Draw no bet. You can have Roma plus 105, Napoli minus 135. Over 2.5 is plus 110. The under minus 140. Scotty, I'm going to toss it up to you first with buy or sell. Both Roma and Napoli will miss top 4. And just for the listeners' knowledge, there are 8 teams currently between 3rd place and 11th place. They are separated by 7 points total.
Yeah, I think at first glance, I would buy that neither of these teams are finishing the top 4. I think the hard part becomes, okay, you have the 2 Milan clubs and Juve probably cemented in there, and then a 4th spot up for grabs between, these 2 teams, Bologna, Atalanta, maybe Fiorentina. I don't know how much I buy Fiorentina. And so slotting in one of those other clubs ahead of these guys at the end of the season is a little bit more of a difficult decision. So I think at first glance, I buy it. I don't think either team has been playing really well. Roma made a little bit of a run, and then last 2 weeks they've dropped points in consecutive matches. So that's kind of brought them back down to earth a little bit. And we all know that I'm not a huge believer in Napoli, and I think Napoli are going to struggle in January for all the reasons we've discussed on this podcast for many episodes now. So I definitely don't see Napoli finishing there. Can Mourinho pull a rabbit out of the hat and get Roma back into that position at the season's end? Maybe. But I think if for me to really fully buy this outright, I'd have to give you a 4th team to take that spot over them. And it's too hard for me to narrow it down and say for sure Bologna or Atalanta will finish above those guys.
Yeah, I think for that reason, before I toss it up to you, Coach, that this is like, for me, maybe the most interesting, difficult to answer buy or sell we've ever done, because you have both of these teams trending way downward, right? They are spiraling. Napoli's on their 2nd coach. They just got bounced from the Coppa Italia by Frosinone, who scored 4 goals in 20 minutes to steamroll that game. We have a Roma who Mourinho is back to his old tricks, right? He is demotivating players. Doesn't sound like the fans are happy with him. I'd love Coach's take on that. At least what I'm seeing, it's kind of like, okay, this is wearing a little bit thin, as Scotty predicted 3 years ago. I'd say the timeline is right on track. You have the injuries starting to pile up, but who the fuck do you think at the end of the season, we're what, 35, 40% of the way through, who's going to cement themselves in that 4th spot? It's tough to bet on anybody. The teams around them are letting Roma and Napoli hang around. As I said, only a 7-point difference. If you go all the way down to 11th, it's only a 5-point difference, if you're looking at even 4 through 9. So definitely a little bit muddy. Coach, you think your team could pull it off?
I think it's too early to make a call on top 4, just because everybody's inconsistent from 3 on down, really. Because even Milan, who is in a little bit better position, they've been inconsistent themselves, sitting in 3rd place. So to me, the only clear-cut teams that are Champions League teams right now are Inter and Juve. I think it comes down to that. Inter is a clear number 1. I think we've been seeing that. Coppa Italia defeat today aside in extra time to Bologna. To me, it's funny as it sounds, like you almost have to say Bologna is the team to beat right now for that 4th spot, because they've been the most consistent of the sides in the mix. They at least haven't been losing many games, right? They might draw quite a few games, but they don't lose. And they've performed pretty well in the match. Like they just beat Roma. They drew Inter earlier in the season. I think there's another result or two I'm probably forgetting mixed in. So I think that has beat Lazio, right? Did they beat Lazio? Yeah, so
sure did.
Goes without saying probably this season, but I think, am I going to bet on Bologna to be that team? I don't know if I could bet on them, but certainly they are putting themselves in a position where they're becoming the team to beat. We'll see what happens this weekend against Atalanta. I think that'll be interesting. I think if they could follow up the Roma win with a win against Atalanta, they will really start to believe in themselves as I think a top 4 contender, and make other people believe.
And that's just to interject and give a point. Like if they do that and beat Atalanta, well, that's fucking 3 or 1 point that Atalanta doesn't get, right? So that's like another rung to not get a top 4 spot.
Yeah. And that's the whole thing. I think, Roma's in a gauntlet of a stretch here where they're playing. They played Fiorentina 2 weeks ago. They played Bologna last weekend. They've got Napoli this weekend. Next weekend's Napoli. The weekend after, sorry, this weekend's Napoli. The weekend after is Juve. Then it's Atalanta. Then it's Milan. So like they're playing everybody in one shot. God bless the schedule makers there. I'd love to know. Someone probably said here, "Merry Christmas, Mourinho, and Happy New Year" when they made that schedule. But if they get through that stretch, say these next four, say they can find 6 points out of four, right? In that stretch, they're probably still in the mix. Then you have a lighter schedule to contend with in the coming weeks where you can make up ground. So I think and I'm just saying this from a Rome perspective because that's the calendar and off the top of my head and the team I know best. Like, am I buying them right now to finish fourth? Not after the last 2 weeks, but at the same time, if you survive this stretch of schedule, what's to say you can't get hot again, right? It's one of those things. I think everybody's gonna have their ups and downs this season, and to make a call on neither team will finish top four right now is kind of early. You kind of almost have to check in again in maybe another month or so and see what this table looks like, and see where Roma stands after this tough stretch, and see where is Bologna still doing it after we finish the 19 match point, which is halfway through the season. Another 3 match weeks. But I think it's going to be one of those things. We're going to see teams, especially if the Italian sides can continue to perform in Europe like they have been, and they are in line for one of those extra spots in Champions League and becomes a top 5 race. It's really going to get murky in terms of like how many teams are still in the hunt, I think, because you're going to see even a Lazio or a Torino who have not been performing well still in the mix at this rate just because everybody else above them is so inconsistent. It's really a mess. It makes for entertainment, but it's really like it's crazy to watch on a week-to-week basis because everybody's losing
Crazy
to
to
each
bet.
other.
Forget crazy to watch.
Yeah.
It's fun to watch. It's fucking impossible to bet.
Think of what did we bet? Lazio against Frosinone was a good number a couple weeks ago. We lost that, and I think that was a patron pick. Like matches, like I was going to take Lazio even money this week at Empoli, and I'm like, you know what? I can't trust them. You can't trust them, right? And I think that ties back into this match because all these teams have just been inconsistent at to be kind.
Yeah. Sorry, Scott. I don't know. You're leaning in. I don't know if you have thoughts. I was going to pose a question to you.
I was going to give you a sassy response when it was going to be just Nick. Just you wait until Dybala gets healthy, because then Roma, that's when they make their run. He'll be healthy for like 4 games, and they're going to go, 3-1 in those 4 games, and then he'll be out for another stretch of 10.
And hopefully they'll tell him, please don't slide tackle anybody when you come back, because they lost him actually trying to play defense this time. Like not him getting hacked like it usually is, or a muscle strain. It was him going in for a tackle, and it's like just there's no need. There's no need when you're that valuable.
So you mentioned Roma's schedule. I do want to do our due diligence and talk about Napoli's upcoming schedule. So the 2 games before the end, obviously they're playing Roma next. They have Monza before the end of the year. And then in January, and somebody can spot check me, I don't know when AFCON starts, but the January schedule is pretty light. And I mean, if you want to group Monza into that, it's Monza, Torino away, Salernitana at home, Sassuolo away, Lazio away, Hellas Verona at home. I mean, that's a pretty manageable stretch where even this dumpster fire of a Napoli, you have to expect them to come away with 9 or more points out of that stretch. 10 points, I think, is pretty reasonable.
I'll give you the counterpoint is like
Hit
that.
me.
Those are the teams you need to be beating, and to not have, your full strength squad for those and dropping potentially points there, even if it's draws, like that was almost more damaging.
Yeah. So definitely going to be interesting.
If you're Napoli, like you don't necessarily need to expect wins against Inter and Juve. So like having those matches in January may not be the worst thing in the world, because you're not really, losing out on much.
Yeah, sure. So I think Coach and I both actually have pick in this game. So Scotty, just buy or sell / gun to your head. We're going to change the segment name. Gun to your head. Is there a bet you like in this one?
I mean, I would prefer a draw no bet of maybe Roma just being at home and seeing how bad Napoli were in midweek. That's probably where I lean. I prefer also maybe an under in this one, for various reasons that we've discussed already. But the attacks on both sides have been meager, and I think Jose will have something up his sleeve to kind of make this a frustrating one for the visitors. So I would say maybe a Roma draw no bet, and gun to my head, I'd probably take under 2.5.
All right, Coach likes the sound of that.
Yeah, I think the way this match is going to get played is going to be very tight. I think you have two generally, even Mazzarri historically has been a fairly defensive manager playing a back three. He's not playing a back three anymore with Napoli, but I don't think they can leave themselves too open on the road. I don't think Roma ever wants to leave themselves too open with the squad they have. Mourinho plays that back three and tries to keep things tight as it is. I think it's going to be one of those matches where it's going to be tough to find a goal. And I think if someone could find a goal first, I think that team has a big advantage, especially with the way these two teams have been playing. And I'm not going to tip a winner here just because it's always hard to pick against your own side sometimes. But I do like Roma's chances at home better than their chances if this were in Naples. They tend to be a pretty decent home side.
I lied. I actually don't have a pick in this game. That's how well I know even what I picked from this morning. The one thing I will say, so I tend to agree with you guys. I think this is a classic odds game for me. Like I'm following them to Napoli. Like something sticks out to me, and maybe it's also because Roma couldn't get a single goal, and I had them both teams to score last week when Bologna beat them. And I'm just jaded by this Roma that had like one chance in the 20th minute and then never looked like they were going to approach the box again. So I think that's skewing me a little bit. I'm assuming Dybala's still out, right?
Dybala's out. Lukaku's back.
Yeah. So Dybala's out. I mean, that definitely weighs on me. Looking at these anytime goal scorers, Kvaradona is plus 320 to score. I think that's a pretty outrageous number. Granted, he hasn't been on the best form. He did score last game. I think plus 320 is a big number for him. That's definitely something I'm keeping an eye on.
To score or assist number is, because that if it's at plus 320 for that, then you're looking at probably plus 150 or so for the score or assist, and I'd rather have that.
No, I agree. I'm just saying that's definitely something to keep an eye on. I mean, wait for lineups, but I can't imagine he doesn't start.
I think Lukaku at plus 210 is a solid number too, because with Dybala out, he takes penalty kicks. And he's going to be the biggest goal threat Roma has. There's some nice numbers on a lot of guys. If Pellegrino is in better form, I'd say plus 350 is a huge number on him, but he's been pretty poor lately.
Like all last year, I went in with that mentality. That dude scores like one goal every 10 games. Like, you just cannot take any more of my money as much as I want.
No, and 2 seasons ago, he scored 9 in the league. The past year and a half, it's been tough sledding for him.
All right, let's roll on to our hat trick of picks. As I mentioned, 4 and 6 last week. A couple of tough luck losses. Ready to turn that back around. Scotty, I believe you had the best week of all of us, so why don't you lead it off with your first pick?
Yeah, 2-1 last week. I'm just going to try and stack wins, not stack units. I think that's been a major issue of mine. I've been chasing the high numbers. So I'll start this one with minus 135 pick. It's going to be Liverpool's team total under 1.5 versus Arsenal. As I mentioned when we were discussing it, I think this will be a low-scoring game. One of the key issues that Liverpool have been having in the month of December is that their forwards just haven't been scoring. Aside from the 5-1 victory over West Ham in the Carabao Cup today or yesterday, depending when you're listening to this, they've really only scored the one goal, which was Salah's goal against Crystal Palace when they were down to 10 men. Other than that, I think they got like 7 goals from midfield, all from strikes from outside the box. They've got a defensive goal from Van Dijk and a defensive goal from, I guess technically defensive goal from Trent Alexander-Arnold, and then they've got an own goal. So Liverpool struggling to score with their front line, never really a good sign. And then we talked, Arsenal's got probably the best defense in the league. Joint lowest goals scored allowed with Liverpool. They have the fewest clear-cut chances allowed. So I think Liverpool are going to really struggle to get more than one in this one. And yeah, like I said, I think it'll probably be more of a repeat of last match against Manchester United. So Liverpool struggling to score against the league's best defense, not a good combo, especially considering that Arsenal are probably going to come in and just try and protect the lead or protect the point that they get more so than trying to get 3. So that's my first lock.
All right, this is the match, Nick, you were referring to that we both have a pick in. It's the Bologna-Atalanta match. Yeah, this is in Bologna. I have Bologna draw no bet at minus 110. Bologna is hot, and I should probably say like on fire right now after today's result. I wrote this before the result. Not only have the Rosa Blue climbed to 4th in the table, but they also eliminated Inter from the Coppa Italia. coming back in extra time. Inter scored first in extra time, and then they came back and got 2 quick ones later on, and that's a massive victory for them just from a confidence standpoint. They've been a wagon at home, 6-1-1. I think they've only allowed 4 goals at home. I think they get it done against Atalanta, who's been pretty inconsistent at the Delata. I like them here in this spot at home. They've only lost, like I said, lost 1 home match. So even if you get a draw from Atalanta, you get the push here. I think -110 on Bologna's a great number. Draw no bet.
Yeah, I see this somewhat similar to Coach, but a little bit differently because I like over 2.5 at +110. I mentioned it just a few seconds ago. Roma fucked us last week by not scoring against Bologna. I don't think Atalanta does the same. I think Atalanta overs are back. They had 4 second half goals last week. And Coach mentioned it, right? Bologna has been awesome. Forget about the results. They've been hitting the back of the net. I think this trend of 2.5 goals plus money, have to take it. This is a 2-1 game. At least could very easily be a 2-2 game. And Bologna's been scoring early. I didn't look at it, but Bologna to score first, probably a decent value in this one as well. So I think, especially if Bologna scores first, there's 3 goals in this game.
Game might actually be better than the Roma Napoli game. Now that I think about it,
Definitely will be. There's no question it'll be better.
So maybe that's the game of the week in Italy.
Definitely is.
All right, moving on to my second lock. Like I said, I'm trying to do just stack wins. It's not stack units, so I'm doing the world's safest parlay. It's going to be Tottenham draw no bet versus Everton, so Tottenham at home, and then Newcastle draw no bet at Luton Town. Everton just eliminated midweek from the Carabao Cup via PKs against Fulham, so they haven't been looking too great, at least going forward. Their defense has been fine, but attacking wise, they really rely on Calvert-Lewin to do a lot of the heavy lifting. So I like Tottenham to make a breakthrough in this one, especially at home. So draw no bet here just in case Everton kind of stifle things up and have a classic Dyche match where he just sits back and holds Tottenham scoreless. In the other one, Newcastle are away at Luton Town. Luton Town have looked decent of late, at least at home. So this one's a little concerning, but obviously they had the issue last weekend with Bournemouth with their club captain, Tom Lockyer, going down with a cardiac event. So they haven't had a easy week to build up to this one. And yes, while Newcastle's away form has been questionable, I think this is the exact kind of match that they really need to win to prove that they're going to be a top 4 club at the end of the season. So I expect them to go, all out in this one. So pair of matches, draw no bet, get it at -130 for the parlay. I think that's a pretty safe one. And worst case scenario, somebody here, leaves with a draw and you get your unit back plus a little extra for interest.
All right, I'm going with Torino money line against Udinese for my second one, -135. 3 straight clean sheets for El Toro. Meanwhile, Udinese is winless in 5. Udinese has only won once in 16 matches this season. They tend to find yeah, funny enough, right? Speaks to those inconsistencies we spoke about earlier. They tend to find ways to draw matches. They do have 10 draws in 16, which is pretty crazy. But I don't think it happens against an informed Torino defense on the road. I think Torino, I'd even take a look at Torino clean sheet in this one, but I'm going to go money line -135. I think they get it done at home.
So I was saying to Scotty early on before you hopped on, like, when in the history of this podcast do you think anybody would take a Torino money line? Yet here we are.
Pod first time anyone's taken Torino money line as a lock.
Pod first, for sure. And Steve, you're right. I mean, Buongiorno has been fucking awesome in the back for them. They've always had reliable goalkeeping. And Zapata, man, he's been good since he got there. Like, that was kind of a whatever move from my standpoint. I figured he was kind of finished, but he's looked good.
This will be the week nobody shows up. Don't worry.
Let's see. All right, I'm going to go over to England. I like Brighton money line at Crystal Palace. I think it's +125, so that's really what caught my attention here. I think Brighton have come way back down to earth, but Palace haven't won in their last 5 or 6. I just think this is a good spot to take a shot with Brighton to get back on track.
Yeah, I think Brighton have been due for a while. Nick.
Right.
I'm surprised you didn't say that because I think they've had some middling performances, but a breakout game is coming because we know De Zerbi has it kind of schemed up.
And that's
All right.
exactly kind of it. It's been like win, loss, draw, win, loss, win, loss. Like they lost the last game, obviously, to Arsenal. I think that this is just kind of a get right spot.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, my last lock of the week. It's another safe pick. It's Bournemouth, draw no bet at Nottingham Forest at -120. I also like the money line here at plus money, but just for safety's sake, I'll keep it at draw no bet. This match is really a tale of two sides that entered the season with similar expectations. I think they're both expecting to be safe from relegation, but probably end up in the bottom half of the table. But lately, they've gone in two different directions. Bournemouth have been on a roll. Areola has really got his tactics fully implemented, and the results are speaking for themselves. They've got 13 points in their last 5 matches. They were level with Luton Town in the 60th minute when the match was suspended. So had they gotten a win there, I think they would have had 5 wins and 1 draw in their last 6, making them the hottest club in England. Forest, on their hand, just fired their manager, Steve Cooper. They now have a familiar face in Nuno taking over. So his return to the Premier League after managing Wolverhampton and then Spurs. So again, I do love the money line in this, but just out of caution with the new manager bounce potential that you have here with Forest, I'm going to stick with the draw no bet. But Bournemouth really should be winning this one, even at Forest. It shouldn't be one that they're dropping points in. And I think if they win this one, they move very close to being top half of the table. So another little extra incentive for them.
Yeah, 3 points. I mean, would put them in 10th, depending on what anybody else does.
All right, I'm going to one of our featured matches with my last one. It's Roma Napoli under 2.5 at -135. Like we talked about before, two of the most inconsistent sides in the league who have struggled against direct competition for Europe this season. Feels like a match where neither will want to lose, and I think that leads to a tightly contested, low-scoring match. This feels like it has 2 goals in it at most. I really want to take the draw on this one, but I have a feeling it could end up a 1-0 one way or another. I just don't see it going more than like a 1-1, maybe a 2-0. I just don't see goals in it. I really don't. I think it's going to be one of those, muck it up in the midfield type matches. Don't concede much. See who flinches first, and if someone flinches first, can they hit back? I don't know.
Mourinho, baby. Can't wait. All right, I'm going with maybe my least favorite team in Italy, the definitely least favorite in the top 10. Fiorentina, draw no bet, -135. They are at Monza. I think we've talked about them a lot. Fiorentina are starting to put the pieces back together. They've won 2 out of 3 matches. I believe they've won 4 out of 5. Let me just check. Excuse me, 3 out of their last 5 with a draw in between. I think Monza is a great story. People are high on them. They're playing well, but they've only won 1 of their last 5 games. I'm pulling a Scotty maneuver here. I think it's very well worth laying a little bit of juice. You can get Fiorentina plus money, but lay a little bit to get that protection. -135. Fiorentina is going to be that team that kind of sticks around. We talked a lot about Roma and Napoli for obvious reasons. If they can string together wins against teams like Monza, they're going to be in that 5th, 6th, creeping on 4th conversation, as much as I hate to admit it, because I was the one who had them written off, when they lost those 3 in a row. I was like, there's no chance you lose 3 in a row. You're on the outside looking in, but here they are. And a win at Monza is exactly what they need. So I think they're going to finish the year strong.
Yeah, like I said, I'm still not entirely bought in as Fiorentina as a legitimate top 4 candidate, but
No.
Win here, maybe win against one of these top 6 teams. I'm sure they have one coming up in the next weeks. I don't have their schedule in front of me, and then maybe I could be convinced. But like you said, Nick, we kind of wrote them off about a month ago, and I'm not ready to kind of buy back in.
No, but here, we're having fun with the schedule today. They have Monza followed by Torino. Okay. They start the year Sassuolo, Udinese, Bologna. Inter is tough, but then you got Lecce, Frosinone, Empoli. I mean, very, very, very manageable stretch for them to pick up points.
All right, I'll put it this way: if they win, if they go 3-1-1 through that Inter match, then I'll buy them as top 4 contenders.
I agree. Fair? I absolutely agree. Where I didn't think this was possible a month ago.
But I would guess they go 1, 2, and 2.
Okay. Just let the one be this week at Monza.
Yeah, that's my one.
There we go. All right. Podlock. We talked about it very, very briefly, but we're going to talk about Inter a little bit more here because we are fading Inter. We're going at Lecce plus 2 goals. You can get this at minus 145 currently. Inter bounced out of the Coppa Italia today, as Coach Steve mentioned. Lautaro Martinez did pull up and had to be substituted in extra time. Going to have to assume potentially he may not play, so Inter will have to find their offense elsewhere. Elsewhere means Arnautovic and or Alexis. 120 minutes played today on Tuesday, and they will be looking ahead to their panettone for Christmas. Hard to see them beating Lecce by 3 or more goals. Plus 2, you're buying a lot of results with Lecce with that plus 2.
So the ghosts of Premier League past right there. That's quite a duo.
Definitely. So, and I think 35 and 36 between them.
Might as well be us.
Yeah. Yeah.
No question. So Podlock, 10-5-1 on the season. We're up 4 units, looking to get back in the win column. And that'll do it for us today. If you guys are watching, appreciate it. Like, subscribe, share on YouTube. If you're listening on any of your podcasting platforms, appreciate you doing the same. You can also find us on Patreon, exclusive picks. We're actually crushing Patreon. I think we're up about 10, 15 units on the season. Should have put that in, so shame on me. But for whatever reason, our picks are doing better there than they are here. We'll look to correct that. And happyhoursports.net, written pieces for them weekly. Appreciate you guys listening. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays. We will catch you next round of games.